Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Toastmasters Unplugged here in District 71. My name is Nuala O'Connor and I'm going to be your podcast host tonight. Please be gentle with me because this is a first, and best of luck to everybody who has to deal with me in this first tonight. Tonight we're talking about inclusion, and so the title of the podcast is Inclusion Unplugged. If you're new to this podcast and you've never been here before and you want to make a comment, please do. And hopefully when we come up for air at any point in the conversation tonight, we might be able to involve you in the conversation. And we'd love some questions around inclusion in this podcast tonight. Accessibility, diversity, equity, all things go. I am Nuala O'Connor, as I said. I'm a Toastmaster for about 6 years. I belong to Phoenix Tara Toastmasters in Dunboyne in Ireland. I've held roles in the club, vice president membership, education, president, media past president, and I have been the area director in District 71 last year. I come to this podcast with an energy around inclusion from my own background, but I'm not going to talk about that right now because I would love to get to talk to the other people on this podcast. My background is in education now, and then I moved from teaching in a classroom to educating people about wellness and mindset and mental abilities. I did that for a reason. And it is around my ability to overcome adversity, to overcome things like dyslexia and mental wellness at different stages and stress in my life. And I think it's really important for me and for anybody to be able to state our biases, is the way I put it. Because when we can actually say in a room of people, hi, this is me and this is what I need to be here and to be able to participate, it gives us power, but it also allows other people to be empowered to help us to be there and to be included. So that's where I come from. And I also have a massive, feeling around the language we use and how we are inclusive in the use of our language. So that's a little bit about me in this podcast tonight. But I have three very important guests, three people who really add to the topic of inclusion, both within our district, within Toastmasters itself, but within their own worlds. And that's what I want to talk about, the richness of what we bring to Toastmasters and how we can help others through that richness and that understanding. So without further ado, I am going to bring in our first guest tonight. Well, I'm not. The backroom team is going to. And that is Shelley. Welcome, Shelley.
Hi, Nuala.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Shelley, I'll just say a little bit, if you don't mind, about you that I have here. You're an amazing person, I have to say, around the world of accessibility and inclusion. You walk the walk would be the phrase that I would use. You're a keynote speaker and helping raise awareness and affect change in the areas of accessibility, inclusion and innovation. I mean, you've won awards around all of this. To me, I feel your motivation definitely comes from your lived experiences of accessibility and inclusion, which you'll talk about a little bit more as we go on here. But you're a leader in driving change and your personal perspective is there. But having joined, and you're the baby Toastmaster in this group tonight, you know, you're not long in Toastmasters. You've found a club in Enniskillen there in the north of Ireland, and it is around inclusion. That club is 100% focused on inclusion, but I'd love to even talk about that a little bit. But before I get there, I really would love, I mean, you're a busy woman. You, even tonight, you kept saying to me, I need to be off the call at the end because I need to go straight on to another event. You're so busy. But I'd love to explore that a little bit, because I was up in Enniskillen during the bus tour and I was in your new club, and you were only, as you told us earlier, 7 weeks of meeting at that point. And there performing for us that night were a group called Just Us, a group that you formed from your own experience. So I'd love you just to unwrap that a little bit for us here and tell us a little bit about your journey to Just Us, and even your journey to the whole thing of being so motivated to fight for inclusion and accessibility.
Okay, well, hi everybody. As you said, I live and breathe and probably sleep accessibility and inclusion. It's from nearly 30 years lived experience with a disability, 12 of which, 12 years was confined to bed. I was unable to move, I was tube fed, and that's the way I was in a darkened room, nursed there for 12 years. And then on my 28th birthday, I was hoist lifted for the first time into a chair. And after that, I was able to be out and about and try to reintegrate into society as a wheelchair user. So for the next 10 years, I was a wheelchair user, but I had the mindset of being a teenager because I lost all those years. I thought I could reintegrate into society very easily, go and do what everybody else could do. And I suddenly got a slap on the face because everything that I wanted to take part in, I soon learned that I couldn't. So I don't drink, but I wanted to go and socialise, any pub, club, even to get my hair cut, to go shopping, everything was upstairs. And at the start, it was fun being lifted by 4 bouncers upstairs to go to a nightclub. But then something in me suddenly thought, this is dangerous. And I'm young, I shouldn't have to be stopped from going to do what everybody else is doing. So that's where I suddenly realized that life was inaccessible and where exclusion was quite big in, I suppose, in a rural county as well. Enniskillen is older buildings as well. So there was a few months of why me, and whereas a lot of people would do nothing, there was something that burnt inside me that I needed to change. So I formed, as you said, Just Us as a pun on justice. It's for adults with disabilities, no matter what ability they have. And we provide regular social activities in safe, inclusive, and accessible venues so that everybody can come together, belong, and actually thrive. 6 years on, it's actually their AGM tonight, and that's what I'm running off to. We have dinner dances, we have a choir, we have walk and talk, we have cheer and beer, we bring them to sports, they go to ice hockey matches, we've had weekends away. We are one massive big family, and what those 6 years have taught me is that we are not just making a family and a belonging and making those people participate. We have actually changed the perceptions in a rural county, and those venues are looking for us to come. They no longer know us as, or pity us as the person as a wheelchair user, or God help them. We are now known as the party goers, and people talk to us that we're known by our name, and those changes have just been, they're I can't even put it into words what it means, honestly.
Yeah. And it's been a journey of 6 years, as you said there, but you have changed outlooks, you've changed minds, you've changed mindsets, and actually changed the social activities probably of the members of your group as well, because you've now
it's a lifeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Now they've got the mentality and the language of I can, as opposed to I can't.
You can't take the microphone off them
now. No, I witnessed that when we were up on the bus tour. I witnessed they really enjoyed entertaining us, and we enjoyed them entertaining us as well. It was a great energy, in the group.
Just fab.
Yeah, and I noticed you're wearing the color purple, Shelley, and you are a Purple Tuesday ambassador. Please explain.
I'm known as the Purple Lady. So purple is the colour for the spending power of the disabled, and it's worth $18 trillion globally. So Purple Pound is basically the money that people get with a disability and their families. And so much of that money can't be spent because people can't actually access or get into venues or facilities. So I am the first Purple Tuesday ambassador for Purple Tuesday. And basically what my job is to ask organisations to just think and be mindful. Can every customer enter your building? It's the small things. And what we ask is for them to do one commitment a year. And if everybody did something then over the years, it's just a ripple effect of what can happen. And in a lot of cases, there's not need for big spending. These changes can be simple as make sure that a wheelchair user can fit in, remove a chair, ask people what they need. Yes, automatic doors and lifts are needed, but there's simple things like even having a chair in a waiting room if somebody can't walk down a long corridor. There are simple things that can be done. So it's those commitments that I am pushing in Northern Ireland and throughout the world, just for people to be mindful and to commit to changes and to being inclusive.
That's absolutely. And then I also say you're an accessible hospitality advisor. Is that on the same lines, or is that different?
Everything I do is accessibility. So Accessible Hospitality Alliance was set up last year by a man called Robin Shepherd, who was a hotelier and lived and breathed hospitality and was all about revenues. And that man then collapsed one Christmas Eve. And he was like myself. He ended up confined to bed. Then he was a wheelchair user. And then after that, he tried to go back to work within his industry and started to realise that his industry wasn't as welcoming as the most welcoming industry in the world is hospitality. And he soon realised it wasn't. So he contacted me and he was putting together this alliance because he realised I was on the same journey. So there is a group of people now coming together who are trying to push for accessibility and inclusion within hospitality. Now that started last year. It's only about the same time as Island Voices and Enniskillen, as 8 months. And we only ever thought it was going to be UK based, but I'm only back from Malta. So we've gone to AHA, which is Accessible Hospitality Alliance UK, and we are now doing it in Mediterranean, and I think next year it will be in another country. So this is going global, and it's gaining great speed behind it, and I'm overwhelmed by it, to be quite honest. But it just shows when you get enough people that are committed for accessibility or a cause of some kind, if you get enough people in behind it and they are committed, well, the ripple effect, and it's actually turned into a movement, which is incredible.
Absolutely. And I can hear it in you, and I can hear the things that you've started and how the energy just, it's like the ball just gathers. It's like the snowball. It's just gathering as it rolls.
And you gather along the people that are committed, and, the ripple effects from it are, we didn't think that organisations would make accessibility champions. We now have 20 organisations or more that are coming on board saying we want accessibility champions in our organisation. Those are people, primarily it's nice if they have lived experience because they have more knowledge, but those are people who are brought on, they're in their job, but they get the title as an access champion, and they basically look and watch around them and see what can be changed, or what are people struggling with, what are challenges for people, and they do their best then to see if there's something can be done to make it life easier, or to make them participate in their work, in their travel, in just even enjoying life. So it's just great.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And then to go and form a Toastmasters club that is 100% focused on making sure it's inclusive and accessible. So it's like you're coming full circle. And even what you're talking about there, the Purple Tuesday Ambassador and the accessible hospitality, accessible champions, even that idea, I was thinking, wow, now isn't that a great idea for Toastmasters? We have accessible champions in every area. No more than we have PR champions. It would be a massive step to take. Exactly. But we'll talk about that later when we get to the discussion stage, the panel stage of the conversation. There's one more thing I just want to talk to you briefly about, and that is you are a woman in tech. Am I right? Is that the right term to put on it?
You would be. I'm a woman in tech. I didn't know that I was techie. They actually used to call me Miss Tech Issues because I use voice recognition. I've done my master's through voice recognition. But whenever I was confined to bed, I received postcards from all around the world. My family and friends sent Antarctica, Australia, Portrush, you name it. I had postcards. And those were pinned around my bed. And I used to tell everyone I'll be at every one of those countries. And they used to think I was crazy because at that stage, didn't even know if I would be out of bed. But basically, the one thing I wanted to do when I got back into society was travel. But I soon realised that travel was difficult. So to be able to spend my first night away in the Premier Inn in Lisburn, I had to purchase a hoist at £1,200 just to be able to be toileted. Wow. I had to get those girls taught on the hoist. My carers had to pull that hoist through heavy carpets, long corridors, busy reception areas, and I can tell you it was far from a holiday. So during my master's and my lived experience, I did a dissertation and I interviewed wheelchair users around the world, and I discovered what their needs were. So I have graded them and to their needs, and that is all going into a tech solution, because whenever I see a problem, I think there's a way around it. So I've just come back from London last week, and I won Tech for Inclusion for my idea for my development. So my big shout out to fame is I won a Diversity for Inclusion award last year in Dublin, and I won it, and the people up against me was Yahoo International. So
wow. Brilliant. Yeah. Well done. Congratulations. We have Paul on there, and Paul is saying you're amazing, and it's so true about hospitality and inclusion and accessibility. Absolutely. Thank you, Shelley. I'm going to move on to our second panelist tonight, and I'll give you a little break and come back to you later.
Cheers, Nuala.
So our second person tonight is the good Olga, the great Olga, the fabulous Olga Byrne. Olga, you come to our panel as somebody who actually is the content creator for this podcast, Toastmasters Unplugged. You're currently club president of Fingal Club in North Dublin, as you call it, a gem of a club. Boasting. And you're an immediate past Division C director. So you've a bit of experience of leadership within the District 71. Outside of the world of Toastmasters, of course, you are a nutritionist. That's your job, as they say, Monday to Friday. And you specialise in workplace nutrition, though you don't pride yourself on being a great cook, which is interesting. And I wonder, how does that work? Focusing on all things nutrition, but not being able to put the meals up there in front of people at the end of the day.
I get help.
Thank you very much. Listen, Olga, we know each other from working together last year. I was an area director under you in the division, and we got to know each other. And that's why I was delighted to have you on the panel here tonight, because while you're all of those things, you're also a mother and an advocate of a child with needs. And so that's sort of what I'd love you to talk to us a little bit. You know, what's that like? How has that been for you as a mother to be that voice for her, to be that advocate, but also to be a parent of a child growing up with needs in our world today?
Yeah, thanks, Nuala. Yes, my daughter Abby, who is turning 20 in 6 weeks, she can't wait. She's got a double sort of disability. She has Down syndrome, so she's intellectually has a disability, and also she has mobility issues. They are getting better, but has a series of operations. Has been a wheelchair user, so that will be an interesting one just to talk about in a moment. How I found the journey, I must say, there's the positives, the amazing positives, and of course there's the ones that aren't so positive. The positives are when she went to school as a youngster at 4 and 5, she went to mainstream school, because there's all this thing about inclusivity, which is wonderful. Getting our kids, rather than being in special schools, they're in with mainstream schools. And oh my God, the kids around her were I just cry when I think of them. They were amazing. They grew up with her. They looked after her. They made sure her needs were looked after. She went to a party, they go, Abby can't manage that, and they'd make sure that they went to places that Abby could access. It was incredible. And these youngsters, I said, oh my God, I said, it just comes from in here. They're incredible. And the teachers and the special needs assistants around always said the class with the little Down syndrome girl or the person with the disability were so more empathetic at a very young age. So that was it's just so worth it just to experience that. It was amazing. My mother and my mother-in-law both in tears at her confirmation at how amazing these children were. Stunning. Now, on the other side, the issues, of course, what comes with Down syndrome is various, lots of hospitalizations. But as regards accessibility, when Abby was a wheelchair user predominantly for a while, and that was awkward. First of all, it messed up her secondary school because she was in mainstream, but she just, kind of dissolved into that whole thing. She couldn't take the transition. Even though everyone tried very hard, the transitioning for junior schools are fabulous. Secondary schools are getting there, but the transition just, it didn't work.
Okay.
She had to split from the crowd that she was with,
Okay.
and that was
She couldn't be
difficult.
inclusive even in her. She wanted to be part of the group, but she couldn't be because of being in a wheelchair. So she struggled really.
Yeah, and as well, kind of taking just as regards the day-to-day, as a wheelchair user, if you want to go, she wants to go into town, or, my husband and herself were going to go to town, you have to make an appointment ahead of time with the DART station, that's our transit, to make sure there's somebody there that could help her on. The buses are better, and they do have that issue. However, if there's another wheelchair user on the bus, there's only one position on the bus for a wheelchair user, so you could be waiting if there's many wheelchair users wanting to go to town. So there's little things like that. The pavements are awkward. Abby had a particular wheelchair, and it was just very awkward getting down, the pavement when it wasn't positioned properly, and you get a lot of pavements like that. They were on a slant, so it was kind of a slant. She didn't wheel herself, but if she did, she would have had difficulty. So just lots of things like that, which I never noticed. I would never even given a second thought until I saw it from her side. And it's difficult. Like Abby has an intellectual disability. Abby's very dependent on us. She likes us around. But if I'm thinking of a similar, like a teenager maybe who didn't have the intellectual issue, to go on the bus, it's such like this big noise as they get the thing down. I think if it was me, I'd be going, I'm not good doing it. I don't want that big attention. So it's just, we've come a huge way. I mean, just by integrating our kids into mainstream and to the real life, but there's still a large way to go. We're kind of playing catch up with the physical things that are needed.
Yeah. and now that she's turning 20, would you find that your need for advocacy or that all of the priorities have changed in caring and supporting Abby compared to when she was younger even?
Yeah, what's interesting is I didn't know what to expect when she left school, but we have adult services, which have turned out to be amazing. So I've come from where she's gone to secondary school. I was lucky if I got her there. There wasn't the support. The school tried their best, but I couldn't get her on the bus. There was nobody really to, the proper personnel weren't there to help. And we had a special needs bus. So there was a lot of that. So she's missed out on all that. So now we've got her somewhere where she's actually enjoying and going. But it would be, and they do bring them out into the community. It's so much better than years and years ago. But she is with myself and my husband all the time. And yeah, that's great. I mean, it's lovely. But, she has this various disabilities. I don't know if she was just a wheelchair user, how that would work, but she's quite happy, because she doesn't want to go out. But as an advocate, I'm in an unusual position in that Abby's just a little bit more inclusive than she was in secondary school. So it's a little bit easier for me.
Okay, that's brilliant. I'm going to move on to our third person and come back to you, Olga, because I think you have a unique aspect. We've talked about this before around language and Toastmasters, but I'd love to bring it into the panel discussion at that stage. So I'm going to hold that bit and bring it in when we come to the panel discussion. So we're going to move on to our third panelist tonight, and that is Ed. And Ed comes from a workplace that I am, you're a Toastmaster, Ed. You're a dual member of clubs. You're in Bank of Ireland Online Club and you're in Athlone Club, and you are the immediate past president in Bank of Ireland. So that meant you were the president of the club, and you are the lead in the brand new District 71 Ideal team, which is the inclusion, diversity, equity and lived experience team, and accessibility in there as well. Sorry, the A, that's my dyslexia coming in. But you're the lead of that. And so, but first, before we talk about that experience and being the lead of that group, because that's a brand new step taken in this district to even start up that group, I'd love to hear your experience of working in Bank of Ireland and then being part of the Bank of Ireland Toastmasters and accessibility around that. Because from talking with you and bringing it out here into this podcast, it's a very positive experience, work experience for you. And it nearly brings on from what Shelley was talking about earlier. Bank of Ireland seems to talk the talk when it comes to accessibility and inclusion and neurodiversity.
Thanks very much, Nuala, for having me. Yeah, so hello, everyone. As Nuala said, I work for Bank of Ireland. So that was my introduction to Toastmasters. I joined via the graduate program, and I joined via a different way than most people would, through a head. Some people may have heard it. They are an organization that worked towards access to education and employment for people with disabilities. So I joined you there, and they were really supportive, really looked at the person. They looked at the disability in the context of, what do you need to work? We're not concerned with what you have. It's irrelevant. We want to get you into employment. And I remember the first day, it was 2022. So we were just coming out of COVID. And even still, there was sit down. We're going to bring you the whole way around the building. We are going to do an audit check. And it was really good. And it was accessibility that was looked at from there. And Bank of Ireland is we have a very good hybrid policy, which for me, I said, my team are based in Dublin, but it's very good, very supportive from a flexible working. And then, but one of the elements of the graduate program was you get to shadow a committee or team. And my one was Toastmasters. And I'm very lucky that Toastmasters is all online. And that was, for me, was a really big one. Because I probably wouldn't have got involved if it was going up to Dublin. So I got to shadow Toastmasters. And from there, it was always a nice little mix, because I got to talk about accessibility, but also because it was the online nature of it, no one actually knew I was in a wheelchair. I'd have to bring it up. Whereas if I'm in a person, I never spoke about it, because sure, if you were, then you most likely knew. But from there, it was really positive actually being able to speak and, integrate the same way. It was inclusion to the heart. And that way I got involved as the president of the club last year. And I definitely wouldn't have done that if I was traveling up and down from Athlone. But it was really positive experience. And then to go back to the banks, they're really supportive, these are what we can do, and the online bit. And yes, if we're meeting a person, but we'll also have the hybrid as well for people that can't come up or are based in different countries. But it's very much inclusive, look at the person. And I'm also in the bank, I'm also the co-chair of our accessibility network, which is our committee. So we work across the bank to ensure that colleagues who have any access issues we're working to get the best supports, and we work close with the various stakeholders in the bank who can do the changes, like property and employee relations and various aspects, which is also my team, my day job. And then as part of that, we have various connection circles as part of the bank. So we have groups that support colleagues with hearing impairments, visual, and the one that I would lead out on is mobility. So we're called the Mobilizers, which is a new name. So following on from our heroes and visionaries. So, and we are colleague support. We support colleagues with mobility issues. We provide them tips and tricks. We are running kind of information sessions for colleagues with the various access issues. So for heroes, they'll run for stuff for colleagues who are deaf or hard of hearing or have tinnitus, and visionaries, it's our vision, so support colleagues who have vision impairments. And it's all about looking at the colleague. What can we do to get you into work? And it brought back into Toastmasters. What can we do to get you up on that stage or on that call So you can practice your public speaking and you feel confident and you are included the same way as everyone else.
Absolutely. And it's amazing, isn't it brilliant too, that one flows nicely into the other in you taking the role this year of the lead in the ideal team, because it's like your day job became your evening job nearly in relation to Toastmasters. How have you
Absolutely.
found that? How have you found that journey, Ed, though, within Toastmasters, starting this group this year? How has it been received, or what's your sense of how it's been received within the district? Is it even known about yet in the district? Is it that new?
I would say it is very much in its infancy stage, and this year has kind of been a sort of a check. Where are we with inclusion in the district? With some clubs, as we've heard from Shelley, are fantastically gone on that journey, whereas some clubs are in the process of it. And I'm of the view, no matter where you are, and we heard Olga say as well, when you're not aware of something, you will, like I wouldn't have been aware of something. I wouldn't be aware of accessibility issues if I wasn't in a wheelchair. Whereas I know I'd work with colleagues who are deaf and would use hearing aids, and they're like, yes, that is something I had no knowledge of prior to that, especially, that's my experience with people who have maybe older people, but then the younger people who use them and need them to be able to integrate. So I suppose I would have taken some of that in from it. Like, these are some of the stuff that we use in work and kind of on the other aspects of it. But in terms of the club, so the club, the ideal team was, it was worked and supported by a lot by Kevin O'Reilly, who's our club growth director. And Kevin came with the idea of the ideal team as such to support colleagues or support members with inclusion and various. So it's quite a broad nature. So it goes beyond accessibility. But for me, it's the lived experience. And to give probably the best example, we use lived experience to help promote it. So for those, I'm sure we've all read our newsletter that goes out, monthly newsletter. And then you'll see there's every month there's an article from the ideal team. And the first one was to do with color cards for people who are colorblind, because green and red are the two most common colors for colorblind, especially amongst men. I think it's 1 in 20, men are colorblind with red and green. So when we look at that, that's a problem with Toastmasters, because people can't make them out. So the idea was, let's promote this. We'll use the platform we have to write and encourage clubs to write the color on the cards, or find alternative for team members club members who are hard of hearing. Can you find different ways? If you're at speech contests, can you maybe wave a sign? Can you clap for people who maybe can't actually see the cards at all? Can you use a bell? Or can you find a way? And it's about using the lived experience of the member. We find members, will just like, this is my issue. Okay, what can we do to help you? All clubs are different as well. Some clubs are virtual. They can have the beauty of captions from Zoom, which are fantastic. But other clubs that maybe meet in a small venue with no screen, they're at that disadvantage where they mightn't be able to use captions. But it's about encouraging them. And for clubs who do something well, never be afraid to promote yourself. Use that, say, we've done this. This is a brilliant idea. But it's about putting the inclusion first. And then when you do it for one, you'll always do it. And that's what I find. People always do inclusion. They'll do it without thinking, and they'll do it for the next one.
Yeah. But and as Olga said, sometimes it's the experience. At this point, I think I'm going to bring all of you back into the room, if that's okay, with the green room at the back end. And let's continue this conversation, because every single one of the three of you would know about the accessibility from a wheelchair point of view, and whether it's trying to get your child there or trying to get yourselves there, there's that side of it. But there is also then the neurodivergent aspect of it and the language aspect of it. So inclusion is a massive, massive topic to try and cover, even within an organization like Toastmasters, and Toastmasters being a 100-year-old institution, let me use that word. How do we affect change in an institution that's so well established around inclusion? And I know at a club level, it can happen by virtue of somebody showing up and the need needing to be met. But is it more than that? Is this something that needs to be a systems change? How do we do it? Do we need ambassadors? What do we need?
I'll start this. I'm probably the youngest club here.
Yeah.
Whenever I set up the club, I came from a background of probably knowing that the majority of our members will have an access need, even if they don't have it at the minute. The majority of everyone in life will have a disability or an access need, whether that be temporary or permanent within their lifetime. So in order to future-proof Toastmasters and to not exclude, that's the thing we need to be thinking. Are we actually excluding by how we incorporate our clubs? From the start, I was aware you needed to make sure your parking was accessible, that the door was wide enough for a wheelchair user to come in. Please, if possible, have it on the ground floor. Make sure that there's room for a wheelchair user and let people know that from the start, everybody that walked or rolled through our club, Island Voices, they know that the club is inclusive first, it's friendly and it's supportive, and we're there for everybody. So we need to make sure that we ask the questions, what is it that how can we help you? But to even get people through the door, we need to make sure that we are inclusive and that it starts being spread around. And you were speaking about the timer or the colour cards. I have visual impairments and I couldn't make out the colours on the cards. And we had someone with colour blindness at our meeting. And I actually got in touch with a company called Stride, who were wanting to do something for the rural communities. So they are trying to do a digital solution to a timer. So we're working in Island Voices on an inclusive timer. It's one that will work for all different needs. Now, there's not one size fits all, but there are apps out there that work for each specific needs, and they have been put together, and I will share them if needed out to the wider Toastmasters as well, because they work for all different people, and it's just a matter of trial and error with your apps, and it's about whether you want a signal on screen with the time, whether you want a noise or a sound or a sensory issue. You know, it's about finding the right balance for everybody. So we're still at the testing stage, and you know, there isn't one size fits all because we have so many different abilities. But I think the thing is, it's about bringing it back. And those clubs that are upstairs, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you do have to think, who cannot get to you because you're upstairs? And if you are upstairs, please make sure that you have a lift and that is maintained, or that there's evac chairs, because if there's a fire, that lift cannot be used. And those evac chairs are needed to get those people out. So down the line, it would be nice to maybe think, I'm not saying now, I'm maybe saying in the next 5-10 years, that there maybe should be rules put into place for Toastmasters in the venues that they're allowed to choose, so that we can have as many people participate and gain confidence and leadership skills that we possibly can.
And very good points made there. Absolutely, Shelley. Anybody like to respond or take on from that?
And I think that's so important, and especially when Abby, we have had to turn back so many times because we haven't been able to get in when she was in that wheelchair. For example, we went down to her passport at the Gardaí station, the police station, and that, you know, that special lift that goes up, you know, those outdoor ones wasn't working. We went to a coffee shop with Abby, and my husband and her got stuck for about an hour. The lift, the special wheelchair lift broke down. So even though they might have them, it's so important to service it, because there's nothing worse than, you know, thank God it was my husband, because he was very calm. I would have been like, oh my God, are we going to run out of oxygen in this lift? Because it was internal. But yeah, you know, we went all the way down to the passport, you know, with our other daughter, and, you know, we had to turn back. Or we actually ended, I think Colin lifted her up, you know, she was small at the time, but there's people who won't be able to do that. You know, I think it needs to be checked. And it's interesting with clubs, you know, again, it not being in their in the horizon of their thinking. You know, there are people who would like to come that they don't know. You know, there could be people in that area, and it'd be lovely to see Toastmasters Club maybe reaching out on their socials and saying, you know, we are an accessible club. Because if we don't put it out there, there's people who won't even think about doing it. Like Ed said, you know, I never even thought about Toastmasters. It's only because I was shadowing in that group. And, you know, then I realized how cool this is. And I was able to talk about, you know, being a wheelchair user, you know, to get that message out and as in put in the supports, make sure we have it accessible, but shout about it as well, because that would be lovely to get everybody in there.
Interestingly enough, in preparation for tonight, sorry. Oh, Ed, go ahead.
It's from just to give an example with the Athlone Club in last year. It was actually a meeting. I wasn't at myself, and I seen into the group, or I was on Zoom, and I was, why are they taking so long at the break? Like, this is going on way too long. The reason was they were upstairs, the venue they were in, was
I think Ed might be having signal difficulties there.
Sorry, did I break away, did I?
You did break away. Come back to us.
I'm back.
You're back, I hope.
Yeah.
They were taking so long.
You got as
far as they take. Yeah, you were saying that they were taking so long at the break, and the reason was.
Yeah, so they took so long, and the reason was because someone got stuck in the lift and they couldn't get down. So what the club decided to do was they moved the venue down to the kitchen so everyone could be part of it. They weren't leaving one man behind. And then they actually afterwards, they decided, we need to move here. We can't do this. We will work in the kitchen every meeting will be in the kitchen until we can find an accessible venue. And that club has had multiple people, Athlone has had multiple people with accessibility, with mobility issues. And that is because the club is promoted as accessible. And it's an example you used, and they acted on the spot. And it's very much used the lived experience to integrate the club into an inclusion.
That brings up an important point, Ed. Should we actually make a list have it on the website of clubs that are accessible, or have some mark beside them and this is an accessible club, so that people can identify very quickly? For example, I'll use our area as an example. We're all geographically within 20, 30 kilometers of each other, all the groups, but we are in a small town in Dunboyne, and there are very few places that we could actually get access to and could afford to have access to as a club that would be accessible. And because they close at times when we were having meetings, or they don't open in the evenings, or it's pubs, or it's a hotel that's extortionate in price. And so, but there are clubs in our area, not far from us, that are accessible, that people could get to. And so if we advertised our area, well, this is the accessible club. This is, we have stairs in our club. But for example, our president couldn't make it to our meetings for part of last year because she had a back issue, was waiting an operation, and then in recovery afterwards, she couldn't do the stairs. And we had no lift. We had no way of doing that. But we also had no alternative venue to use, because when we were looking for an alternative venue after COVID and moving from the hotel, we had nowhere. We couldn't find a place in the town that could actually accommodate our needs, except this place that offered us, and it was upstairs, was the only available space within this place. So, but to get over the problem of accessibility, we could advertise the clubs that are accessible in the vicinity. Is the dog in, Olga?
She's appearing as we speak. She's looking calm. Yeah, the dog, to anyone who's listening, the dog has a way of making herself heard and known when I can't get to her. So hopefully she will remain silent.
Thank you. So
I think that's actually a really good point in terms of clubs. I'm not sure if there is actually a way on the District Toastmasters website. And that's actually be and beyond District 71 element, but it's very much as we said before, it's promotion on social media. This is it, but it's advertising it to the clubs. There's various, so it's working with your area director, with your district director. These
Yeah.
are, so if you're in, we'll say, Athlone, just use the one. Actually, well, this club is not accessible, but the next one is. Now, of course, the challenge is if you're in somewhere like Dublin, that's fine, because Dublin has bus routes, as we're saying, has very accessible. But I know from my end, I wouldn't be able to get any club in the district or the area that Athlone is in for a meeting. So if Athlone wasn't, it wouldn't be an option for me. But and this is used as a plug more but also to use the point, the ideal to have a sort of a checklist survey that's been gone out to all members, presidents and VPs about see where you are in your accessible journey. I'm using the word even though I don't like it. The journey of where accessibility you are, inclusion, beyond, be it language, for how you support people, and also what do you want? How do you want? Do you feel you have the tools, the resources to do it? Do you feel you have the ability, the knowledge, the money? Is what do you need to make your club more inclusive? And so that is open, and then clubs it's open to everyone, and we've advertised in the newsletter as well. If you want to provide your take, if you're a member, if you're a club officer, please do, because that is how we will learn. It's a lived experience, and it's to promote yourself, because you're the one that's going to be able to say it, and it's to make the better experience for everyone.
Absolutely.
Can I bounce in there? We have at Island Voices, we've done a lot of promotion to say that we're inclusive. And on Tuesday night past, we have had a wheelchair user sign up as a Toastmaster. So it just shows when people are given the chance, then they do come along and they do join. So it's lovely to hear that the promotion and just keeping it going and keeping explaining that you're an inclusive club, it does work. So it's lovely. It really is.
And if you have someone in a wheelchair, ask, or disability, ask. Please ask them, what do you need beforehand? What do you need afterwards? How did you find it? Like, why? Like, we need to know. And there's never afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. Now, you don't ask them, what's your disability? What is your condition? That is not it. But it's like, what do I need to do? I'm really sorry. How do I refer to you? Do you want me to refer to you? Are you a wheelchair user? Are you a person in a wheelchair? I personally, doesn't bother me, because doesn't change who I am, but it's language, and it's just see the person. How do you want me to refer to you? Do your preferred pronouns? Is that it? Don't use Mr. Toastmaster. Very inclusive, but ask. Don't be afraid. The worst they'll say is no.
The other thing that we did is we put up that if anyone requiring access needs, we made sure that their carer is not charged when they are attending Toastmasters. So it's things like that. They shouldn't be double charged or penalised because they need help. So it's even realising that if you need help, your carer comes along with you. So
absolutely brilliant idea. You mentioned language there, Ed, and I know this is something that myself and Olga, and I mentioned at the beginning, that we talk about. In fact, I have a phrase, mind your language. And it's about the language that we use, and are we aware? Like, accessibility is a big issue, because if people can't get to the meetings in the first place, how do they? In our club at the minute, for example, we have one of our members who's undergoing treatment, and he can't come into the physical room. We used to be a hybrid club, and we let that go, and we went back to being all in person. And if we were still a hybrid club, I often wonder, he could come. And our current president could have come when she couldn't attend, had we still been hybrid. So I do wonder about that too, and about, even that being a way of helping people to access it. But to go back onto then, when people do come, do they feel that they're welcome? Do they feel the language in the club is actually supportive of them and how they are in the club? And Olga, we and you have had big discussions on this about the language and minding the language and what's going on. But you have a major bug around this one?
I have a big one because I'm thinking about the new generation coming up, Gen Z, isn't that one? The name of the organization, it might work in America, Toastmasters. When I first heard it, the first thing I thought about was about wedding speeches. So it's not doing what it says on the tin. But the other thing is, I remember I was doing in my day job. So we were doing a session with a group that were from America, and we had the master class. And they said, we don't like the word master. It's, it can be triggering to some of our members. And I thought about it. It's so archaic. It's so set back, in the Middle Ages. It doesn't resonate. Like if I heard Toastmaster, I'm not going there. It just sounds something like way back wherever. And as you said, the madam, the mister, I know it's to do with the pronouns, but also, as a youngster, do they want to hear that? I think it's a bit of fun. It's grand. But, in all seriousness, if I'm 19 or 20, I'm going, gosh, there's old ones in there talking about masters and misters. Think about when you were young and some habits that had, our generation before us. We're still using, organization was founded 100 years ago. And Ralph Smedley was probably the equivalent of the guy who does a diary of CEO now. He was a thought leader. But I'm sure in 100 years' time, we'll be looking back and going, we need to kind of adjust how we refer to ourselves. It needs to say what it does on the tin. I know it's kind of slightly, it's slightly gone off case, but it's important that, the language, is it inclusive? Probably not, in this day and age. 100 years ago, maybe, but I just think it needs to move on, definitely. For building membership. I don't think I'd have been here if I had somebody said to me, would you like to come to Toastmasters? I said, I hate weddings, I'm not going. And it was only because I gave her the chance to answer. But she said, no, it's not like that. And I went and I loved it. And I thought, oh my God, no wonder it's the best kept secret, because it's not marketed in Europe. That terminology might work in the States. They love that, even though the word master's there. But I don't think it works in the UK. You imagine I think they have all those people in gowns, and it's sort of to do with olden days. And with us, it just doesn't work. And so that's my little bugbear, and it's been heard.
Yeah. And it needs to come into the conversation. I mean, this is the beginning of a conversation. No more than the Ideal team is the beginning of a new journey in this district around accessibility, around inclusion, around diversity, around equity. I mean, we're only scratching the surface here. We're only getting to the bit of helping people to get to a meeting, and then, as you said, Ed, trying to accommodate their needs, and Shelley, within the meeting, and then asking them at the end of it, did we? And are we willing to listen to what the answer back is? We think we could be meeting somebody's needs, and we could actually be annoying them. We can overdo it in Ireland, especially. I think, sit down there, you'll have a cup of tea. We did with the old joke about that, and
it could be a bit overwhelming to some.
Yeah, exactly. It could be they want to be left alone. They want to be just left to do their own way and do their own thing. So it is important to ask: are we over meeting your needs? Are we overcompensating here? We don't mean to do that, but we do like to be accessible. For example, Shelley, I'm sure and Ed referred to it a minute ago. A brand new club is starting off. It's easier for you to focus on accessibility at one level because you don't have the history of being a club that's been there for a while, unlike other clubs who've been there maybe 100 years or close to 100 years, and they're an institution. How do they change? You're a brand new club. You can set it up your way as long as you stay within the bylaws. And interestingly, it is in the bylaws that we will not discriminate and that we will try and meet the needs of everybody, regardless of what their need is. So it is there. It's how do we harness that and bring institutions along with us in this conversation. And like Ed, for example, you've put that survey out. How many responses have you had to the survey?
We've had over 40 so far, and it came out a couple of weeks ago at the time of recording. So it will stay open, and we won't close it. We'll compile our findings and we'll issue them we'll consult with district leadership to see what can we do. But we won't close it. It'll be there. People will be able to see it. So if you're like Island Voices, a new club, you can see, okay, this is what we're doing. But also, what are they asking us to do? Why are they asking us to do this? Why are they asking, do we do it? maybe this is something we should be doing. So it's
Mm.
also to give you tips as well to see, should we be having caption software? Should we be doing offering guide, promotion of guide dogs to come to meetings? That's something, and it's something you won't think of, and they'll be like, oh, that's actually a really good idea. Why aren't we doing it? And but it's learning from others.
Yeah, I think that's
We-
key. It's a sharing of ideas, isn't it? It's people saying what works. For example, around the language, we're not going to get it right straight away. What do we change things to? But if people share what they try and what works in their club, then it'll help other clubs to get what will work for them as well. Sorry, Shelley.
Sorry, we actually, when we talk about overwhelmed, we noticed that the application form, when we gave it out, was overwhelming. So one of our members actually took it upon herself and she just typed out what was needed. So it simplified that whole process. So sometimes in life, even getting through the door is so overwhelming that you don't want to overwhelm people once they're through there. You want that welcomeness and friendliness, and you want them to be at ease as much as possible. And I think that's the main thing to come out of this. If we can get them through the door, you want them to enjoy it, and you don't want them to be overwhelmed. And if some of their ability is not helping because we haven't been able to facilitate them, then it is up to us as presidents and whatever. If a group becomes too big, you automatically think we need to move to another venue. But we are not thinking if somebody has access needs, we have to move. So we have to be forward thinking, and no matter what comes to our club, we have to move with the times, we have to move with the abilities. And that's what I think it's all about, adapting to what we have and what we need. But I think if we can think ahead, then it's a big part of what's happening here.
Thank you, and that's spot on. We're coming towards the end of our session together, and I suppose, in conclusion, as we say in Toastmasters, if you had one thing that you wanted to say to clubs to encourage them to begin the journey of looking at inclusion and accessibility with their club and how they could accommodate needs, or direct people towards clubs that are inclusive, what would that one thing be? What would you want to say to clubs listening to this, or who might listen to this in the future, or even people in business, maybe aren't Toastmasters, but this is a topic for them to take up in their organization? What's the one thing that you would say, start here or try this?
I would say, think of who can enter your venue and think of who you're excluding. Who are we including and who are we excluding? And that would be a big eye-opener, and it opens a lot of questions.
Absolutely. Spot on. Ed, have you anything to...
I had think of who is attending. Can make up the road. Can he attend? Could he attend the meeting? No, sure he can't do, because he can't. He's blind. He can't see. Okay, that's so. We need to accommodate people, but think of those. How can each person attend? But talk to people. Ask. People are real people. They have voices. They have ways of communicating. So talk to people, and don't be afraid to ask. You might get your head bit off, but that's 1% less. Couldn't be less likely. But talk to people.
Talk to people, absolutely. And Olga?
I think as a club, look and see how inclusive you are, link in with Ed, link in with the ideal team, and then push it out there, because there are people sitting there who only are dying to go to things, but kind of go, oh, I don't think I can. And say, we have it here. Come and see us. We'd love for you to pop in and visit us and help us, move through it. But I definitely think, because I think the club I'm in is fairly accessible. It mightn't have the captions, but something we can explore. But I'd love people out there who are sitting at home and saying, I'd love to do it, but I can't. Saying, we're here. We'd love to see you. That's my bit.
And isn't that it? It's how do we get people through the door? Can we get them through the door? If they came, could they get through the door? And ask. Don't assume, because we know what that does. Ask people. Don't be afraid to ask people. Absolutely. And and think about the people who aren't coming to the meeting. If they did come, if the neighbour came, what would we do? And you're right, Paul. Paul has put a comment in there in the box, and he said, there's so many takeaways tonight. We'll be tabling them at our next meeting next week. Excellent. Who are we including and who are we excluding? Powerful statement. There you go. That sums it all up, Paul. Thank you very much. That sums my job. We have hit the hour mark. I wasn't sure we would, but we have. This is a topic that I think we have begun to talk about tonight. You're right, Ed. You have started this year putting things into the magazine, putting out surveys. It's a beginning. We are beginning the journey of accessibility. Some clubs are already there. And if you go to Toastmasters International magazines and look back and put the word accessibility in, you will see that there are clubs doing this all around the world and trying to do this, but they're small. They're small. We need to be at the point where most of our clubs are doing this and succeeding in this, and that there's just a small amount who can't, maybe for certain reasons, but the majority are doing this. And this, I believe, is the first step. And what we're doing this year in District 71 is the first step. And I'd like to thank Olga for having me tonight and for having this topic. We talked about this last year, and now it's out here, and we've begun with this in Toastmasters Unplugged, with Inclusion Unplugged. Next week, or not next week, the next Toastmasters Unplugged is going to be about mindset shifts. And that's going to be on the 21st of April, if I'm right. So come along to that one as well. So it's nearly following on from this, isn't it, around accessibility and changing the mind shift, changing that mindset, resetting the mind. Wouldn't it be great if we could get the whole of Toastmasters to reset their mind around inclusion, diversity, accessibility, equity, and of course, sharing the lived experience together. So thank you. You have been watching Toastmasters Unplugged. I have been your host, Nuala O'Connor, with Shelley, Ed, and Olga, and I hope you find this enjoyable. Please continue to enter comments, whether it's on YouTube or on LinkedIn. We'd love to keep the conversation going. Like, share, post this, tell your friends about this, tell the clubs about this, and let's get everybody talking about inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and how we can make that a really lived experience for all our clubs. Thank you very much.